So, hi, Angie. I am so excited that you and I have a chance to talk today about this absolutely earth shattering film, Medicating Normal. So, we had the great honor of showing this film with you guys in community, which is so essential, I think, for this topic. And then to have a discussion afterwards with so many people from all walks of life. And so I just want to hear from you, like, how did this connection happen? Like, how did you get involved with this project? How did they find you? Like, how did this happen?
So what happened was there's a lot of support groups on Facebook, and you always hear like, don't Google your symptoms, don't look online, don't trust the internet. Like, I had gotten that whole spiel, but to back the story up a little bit, I was taken off of the last medication that I was tapering really quickly by the doctor, and about 5 days later I started experiencing withdrawal, but I didn't know it was withdrawal because nobody told me that that could happen. So I had Googled my symptoms and didn't really find anything. And then I found this Wikipedia article that said benzo withdrawal, and all my symptoms were there. And I was like, oh my God, this is what's happening to me. So I found support groups for people that were coming off of benzos, which is what was happening. So I was in all these support groups, and the filmmakers were in there looking for subjects. And they basically just put an ad out that said, we're making a film about psychiatric drug withdrawal. If you're interested, please email us. And then they had been interviewing like hundreds of people to hear their story, but I never answered the ad. I just ignored it because I was suffering so bad. I just had no interest in telling my story or anything. But somehow one of the filmmakers asked someone if they wanted to be in the film, and they said no, but you need to ask Angie Peacock. And I still don't know who that person was. But she messaged me on Facebook. I told her my story a little bit, and then she said, well, I want to call you and hear more. So she called me on the phone, and I told her a little bit more, but I didn't really tell her like the big details. And then she said, well, I want to come visit you. Can I come visit you in St. Louis and go for a walk or something and talk about this? So she flew out to St. Louis from New York, and we went for a walk, and I told her a little bit more of my story. And then she basically just kind of wore me down. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll be in the documentary. But in a bittersweet kind of way, in that moment, I was really extremely suicidal. I did not want to be here anymore. I barely was talking to anyone. I was completely isolated. Most of my hours were spent on the couch just suffering. And so in a weird way, the film kind of saved my life, because I was like, as soon as she closed the door and went in the hotel, I thought, okay, well, I can't kill myself if I'm going to be in a movie. Like, they're going to come back and see me, they're going to come back in 6 months. And then, so I just kept thinking, like, I don't want them to film me. And then it'll say at the end of the movie, like, Angela Peacock was a great person, and then she died by suicide. And I was like, that's not going to happen. So in a way, it was kind of like very life-saving to be involved in this project. Yeah.
That is wild. I did not know that story.
Yeah.
That is so wild, because my question to you was, how did you get the courage? There's still so much stigma on mental health issues. How did you get the courage to go public with your story? But I guess you were kind of dragged into it by some guardian
A little bit.
angels.
A little bit, but it was about controlling the narrative. I kept thinking, if I came off these drugs very quickly because my doctor wanted me to. I was getting worse and worse and worse. Like, it was like paradoxical. The medication was making me worse. There was no clear other reason why I should be worse. Anyway, so I came off really quickly at the end, and I knew that if I go back to the hospital and tell them what I'm experiencing, they're going to put me back on medication. That is what they do. If I tell them how I'm feeling, they're going to take this as mental illness, when I know that I was normal and then I wasn't. And the thing that happened in between was I was taken off the drug really fast. So, like, I knew that this is a drug adverse event, withdrawal effect, whatever you want to call it. There's all kinds of language for that. But so a part of this was like controlling my narrative. If I die by suicide, they're going to say, see, this is PTSD. She was a veteran. She's one of the 22 a day that kills themselves. And I was like, that is not what is happening. That is not what's happening. What's happening is I was given way too many psychiatric drugs. I took them exactly as prescribed or less than prescribed. I followed my doctor's order, and here I am in a withdrawal state. And this is not mental illness. The drugs change who we are. I mean, that's what we expect from them. So how do we expect they're not going to change when you come off of them? Like, the changes don't go back like right away, you know? So it changes the nervous system, it changes the way your brain works, everything. It's not, everything was changing. So it was me controlling my narrative. Like, no, this is not, I'm going to tell my story and talk about this the way that people talk about going to the grocery store. Like, it's stigmatizing to say that you have mental health problems, but then to say the medication hurt me and now I'm off the medication, that's even more stigmatizing. Like, nobody wants to hear that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so now you are a person who's gone through the whole like piece of it, right? You went through severe trauma, you got diagnosed, you got put on medications, you experienced that they're not the right intervention. You're trying to work yourself out of the damage from all of that and recover from that. What would you say after having experienced all those different pieces of that? What would you say? What do people need who have mental health symptoms like depression, anxiety, or PTSD? What do you think like the right treatment would be?
That's a tough question because I think everybody's so different. This is what I do know for sure. When the initial trauma happened, you know, I had things happen in childhood, teenage years. I'm not like a saint by any means, you know, but when that big major life-changing trauma happened, this is what I know to be true, that the emotions and feelings that I felt in that moment were so overwhelming, I didn't know what to do with them. I was like, holy shit, what is this? You know, it was being sad, suicidal, depressed, upset, scared all at once, and I didn't have any language or like inner life to know how to deal with that. Okay, so that is what led me to, I'm going to the psychiatry because that's what I'm told. Those are the people that help you. That's where you go when you need help. So I think that was my cardinal mistake. So what I think a lot is that we just don't know how to handle those big emotions. We're not taught that in school. My parents didn't know it. I mean, you know, they have their own problems from that. So I think number one, we should learn, like, what does a feeling even feel like? Like, what does anxiety feel like? What is it telling me? What in my life needs to change that could be bringing the anxiety? There's all this like self-inquiry that I learned later, that like a language to say how I'm feeling. And then to know, okay, this is a big feeling, but like, what do I do with it? Or how do I live with that? So, I mean, there's that part too. But, you know, along the way, I did try lots of different things. So therapy worked for me for a long time. I actually went to become a therapist. So I have training in somatic experiencing and trauma therapy. And so part of my journey was like learning, like, who am I, you know, but again, the medical model didn't really sit well with me. But I've tried equine therapy, EFT, EMDR. I have a service dog that worked for a lot of years, art therapy, writing. So I think there's like a magic potion that everybody would have. And like some things work for a year and then they stop working and you have to try something else. And as you get older, things change. And as you get new relationships and you grow into yourself, you know, new things work. But it's a constant evolving conversation with yourself. Like, what do I need now? What could help? Okay, this isn't serving me anymore. What is going to work next? So gave the medication the best shot. Trust me, I tried more than 45 psychiatric drugs in a 13-year period. I gave it all I had, and like, it still didn't work, and it just doesn't work for everyone. And I thought they worked for a long time, and then they stopped working. So here we go. We just evolve.
What I'm hearing is that you say this initial moment, right, when your big trauma happened and you felt so overwhelmed, that there needs to be a piece of like helping people understand, like, what is this? That this is not mental illness, that this is not a mental health disorder that you're born with, but it's a totally different story. It's trauma and it has an effect in the nervous system and it needs other kind of support. And I think, I mean, in my work with kids and families, I see where in that moment, everything goes down the wrong path because people, I had a kid who I worked with last week at 13 years old, you know, serious self-harm, suicidal, using all drugs under the sun, all mental health issues up and down. And I said to her and her mother, I said, okay, let's put this on a timeline. How did this start? And she said,
Yeah.
I was dating a boy and he cheated on me and I was sad. And I went to the doctor and I was put on antidepressants, right? And I was just shocked to hear that, right? That it's this one
Yeah.
moment where somebody has a really hard feeling and we have no concept in our culture what to do in that moment for another person or for ourselves.
Yep. Yes. And right now the narrative is, even in college and my master's degree level, we were trained to talk to each other. If you have a classmate who's suffering, you say to them, how are you doing? You listen to them for a minute, and then you decide, okay, are you suicidal? And you ask them, are you suicidal? And then you have to refer them to a professional. So we're not taught to listen to each other. We're taught, I figure out really quickly, are you suicidal? And if you are, I need to get you to a professional immediately. And I think that's we're going the opposite direction. We need to learn how to listen to each other and how to be in community and how to sit with someone in deep distress and not try to fix it and tell them, or one up them like, oh yeah, I had a really bad breakup too and I wanted to kill myself for a month, none of that. Just listen and be with each other and stop sending people to a system that is so broken that it's not working for so many people. I know that's controversial, but
No, and that's a sad situation at this point, right? That because you would think sending somebody to a professional would send them into the right hands with the right resources, the right treatment, the right intervention. But at this point in the US, a lot of the times people just get funneled into the medication route. That's now a major intervention in what we call the mental health system. And that's just not the right intervention for the majority of people.
yeah, it's I just, a bad breakup, like when you told me that story, it made me think of my friend John, who had the same thing happen to him in college. He had a bad breakup. He was put on antidepressants. And now, 30 years later, he's still on them and he can't get off. And it all started from a bad breakup. And he is in the most hellacious, he can't raise his children. He can't feel good emotions. He can't barely make a decision about what drug to taper first because he's so mixed up. And this is a good-hearted guy that he had just sadness, and I don't know. I'm just very skeptical. I mean, like I said, I've tried everything. I'm not saying don't go to therapists. I trained to be a therapist. I believe that helps people, and it's because they're trained to listen for the most part. But I don't know. I think we need more choices. We need more education, and as far as alternatives, what else can you do besides do that, or what can you do while you're waiting for a therapy appointment? I don't know. There's lots of things out there that help. It's not just that one model that works.
Well, and I think at this point, people think they are, open and progressive if they could talk about mental health awareness and even bringing more mental health awareness into schools, bringing more mental health resources to people, right? It all sounds good and everybody wants to be in favor of that. But there's now the suspicion that one of the reasons the mental health awareness, what we all would want, but why this is pushed in schools is that the pharmaceutical industry is interested in getting kids on medication sooner, right? So it's kind of we're in a sad place where we now have to educate kids and parents that mental health awareness is not all the same, right? That we now have to differentiate between trauma and mental health disorders and that they need different treatments. And I can understand that this is, for parents and kids, this is overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? Well, now we can't
and
trust.
Yeah, and because you don't want to, of course, parents are desperate for their kids to feel better, and we wouldn't want to say that, you're suffering, don't you dare go to a mental health professional, or your suffering isn't real or something. So these kids do have issues, and the parents have issues, and kids react to trauma in different ways that can present like ADHD, that can present like depression. Kids have social media influence that we didn't have growing up that caused suicide. The suicide has been rising around the teen because they compare themselves to things that they see. So there's all these things. So we wouldn't want to say that the suffering isn't real and that there isn't some help for that. We're just saying you need to be careful of who is marketing your distress and making money off of it, because I've seen, let me just spew a few facts, but if you diagnose a child, it can impact them for their life. It can impact life insurance, their ability to join the military. you know, it's now a pre-existing condition for insurance purposes. It's not a benign thing to give a child a diagnosis. Their brain is still developing, so if you give them a drug, we don't know what these drugs do long term when a kid's brain is developing. We don't know that. It might appear to work, you know, for a little while or whatever, and I've seen it go horribly wrong. Let me think what else. Oh, I've even seen, like, you know, ACEs screening. Now, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, they want to do ACEs screening in you know, younger ages, childhood. That's great to find out, does this kid have traumatic home experience? But then what does that mean? Now are you labeling them, see, now you're traumatized and now we need mental health treatment for you? Like, do we need preventive treatment? Like, all of that is getting into this medicalizing of these kids are like being traumatized at home. I can see it. Like, I can see in a kid, I'm just super sensitive, but it's like their light goes out a little bit. Like, you can see they have a scared look in their face and their home life wasn't the best. I mean, I was probably one of those kids too, you know, but to medicate that and to not look at the context or not teach the parents parenting skills or not teach the kids how to cope with strong emotion, that is the opposite. When you just drug a kid and give them a diagnosis and then act like throwing money at it's going to fix the problem. It's not. Look at where we're at. The suicide rate has never been higher. The disability rate has never been higher. There's never been so many kids on IEP taken out of the classroom. You know, there's a lot of problems with that model is what I'm saying.
Well, and it seems like, you know, we have known this for a while, right? That what we're doing is not working. And instead of looking at why it's not working, we just try to do more and more of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
More mental health treatment, more medicalizing, more diagnoses, more
Yeah.
medications. So, I mean, I know that's a really crazy question that I have for you, but you've been in this now, right? And in this movement to make a change. Like, what's your sense? Like, what, because this feels like a big undertaking, right? So what's your sense? Like, what can we all do? Like, even parents listening, kids listening, like, what could we do as humans in this time, in this culture, to turn this around or to change it?
I think my sense is, like, I don't have a lot of hope for like legislating this problem. Like, if we could just get government to do this or this or this, I don't think that's the answer. The government is a very slow moving machine. Change happens very slowly. It'll take 20 years before this catches up, you know? So to me, I'm all about empowering people individually to make better choices, to get creative with their problems, to find new solutions. I mean, just one thing, anxiety. I experience anxiety from my stupid cell phone, from reading politics, from being, you know, reading about the coronavirus. It has given me, it's making me a mess, you know? So it's like, turn your cell phone off. You don't need to go to a therapist to talk about how terrible you feel because you're reading this crap, you know? So just being creative and just being aware of like what is going on in your life that could be causing whatever problems you're feeling. Because to me, the symptoms are a way that your body is explaining to you. It has no other way to tell you something's wrong. Those are symptoms. So when you feel depressed, you know, some of it's normal. Like I was telling you before we got on, my dog is dying. I feel deep grief. I'm crying a lot. I've cried so hard in the last week. I've bent over, like literally put my hands on my knees and just cried like a whale. And that is okay. It's okay. I've had to build that capacity to be able to handle big emotion. I didn't learn that out of the gate, you know, but I've been able to, you know, keep myself safe and do that. So I just think, I'm not saying don't go to a mental health professional. I'm saying there's tons of other things we need to build capacity, look at each other. Parents need to be with children more. We work so much. The kids are in daycare. You come home, you're tired, you don't want to deal with them. But we need to make a little space to just be gentle, be patient, be loving to each other. And that can cure a lot of things, just listening and loving. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like taking it back, right? Like, to us not doing this over professionalizing, over medicalizing, but like taking our power back and being like, wait a
Yeah.
second, feelings are good and they have their purpose. You know, that's what we do in Natural Highs. We teach kids and adults and parents that anxiety is actually not a bad thing at all. It's actually your superpower. It's your sign that you have a lot of energy for something, and you can learn in your nervous system how to channel that. Or that sadness is an incredibly amazing feeling that can make your heart softer and care for other people. You know, so I mean, I think we need to start kind of like from scratch,
Yeah.
teaching
Yeah.
people again about that emotions are not bad, that they are incredible, and that it's okay to have them and to listen to them, and that we can get each other for support. Mhm.
Yeah. I learned that. And when I started doing my internship, and I was an outpatient therapist, and I treated, you know, my clients were immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, people that didn't have access to mental health, like, you know, low socioeconomic, whatever. But what I noticed was, like, if you ask someone, how are you feeling right now? People have no clue. Like, they don't even know how they feel. They don't even have language to say how they feel. They're just like, you know, they almost like, you can see them stop, and then they like kind of look around like, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. And we just don't learn that. And I think that's the biggest issue. We don't learn how to feel and how to be, and then what to do with how we're feeling. I don't know.
Yeah, and like I say, you know, I work as a trauma therapist, right? So I work with people on the most severe end of the spectrum of trauma. And I say to people, like, look, our nervous system, our brain was formed over the last 2 million years. And think about what people have been through, humans, like for 2 million years, like the worst, like
Yeah.
all the time, the worst. Like we're
Yeah.
built for
Yeah.
trauma, and resilience
Yeah.
is built into us. And we have to reclaim that. We have to learn again, like, oh, how does this work? How do I do that? And not hand it
Mhm.
over to other people to fix us, because
Yeah.
there's no need for
That's what I
fixing.
did. That's what I did, is handed it over. And now when I look back, I think to myself, Angie, the way that you reacted after coming out of a war zone was normal. There's no disorder about it. All those symptoms were your body is so smart. It kept you awake at night so that you would be careful not to fall asleep too deep, because you could die that way. It wasn't eating a lot, because if you have a full stomach, you can't run away from a predator. If you're like, you know, always scanning and looking around, it's trying to keep you safe. Your body evolved to that perfection to do that for you. And for them to call that a disorder, no, that's not a disorder. That's, your body is so smart, it's trying to keep you alive. It's helping you. You should say thank you. Thank you for saving me. You know, women in domestic violence situations, of course you're going to be scared. Not that it doesn't feel good. Okay, I'm not going to say that the suffering isn't real and it doesn't feel great. I mean, of course you want to go hang out with your friends and not be worried about your surroundings, but you know, our bodies are smart, and that's what those symptoms are there for, to keep you alive in a dangerous situation. Yeah.
Totally. So how do we do that? How do we teach people about the difference between a disorder and a healthy trauma reaction?
I don't know. See, the textbook answer that always bothers me is, we were just talking about this on our team, about the textbook answer is, things are normal until they start interfering with your life. And then that's when it becomes a disorder. And it's like, but who decides when it's supposed to stop? You know what I'm saying? Like, when I come back from a war zone, am I supposed to be like back to work and functioning within 2 weeks? Who decides that? You know, that's the question that you should be having. If you come out, your ex-boyfriend almost murdered you, are you supposed to be over it in a month? No, it's going to affect you. And I wish somebody, looking back on my own traumatic experiences, I wish somebody would have told me, we don't really understand trauma all that well. You might not ever get over this. You might have experiences for the rest of your life. You might have to learn how to live with that. Just be honest with me. To act like all these symptoms are just going to magically disappear and you'll never feel any kind of, you know, mistrust or dangerousness ever again. It's just unrealistic. It's just not going to happen. At least I don't believe it's going to happen. But
Yeah, or what if the whole thing looks totally different? What if it's not about fixing and taking the symptom away, but what is it about reclaiming that power of our body, you know, and letting the whole experience transform and change us? I mean, I'm looking at you and who you are today, and I didn't know you before, but I have to say, you are an incredibly profound and amazing person. And I'm sure that if you had an easy life, that would be different. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I say that to everybody when I work with people who are completely debilitated. I say, do you remember when you meet people who are profound? Do you know what I'm talking about? And they're like, yeah, yeah. I said, did they have an easy life? And they're like, no. I'm like, see, I mean, it's not fun. And of course, we don't wish trauma on anybody, but really, it makes people incredibly wise and profound if they get to own the healing and themselves. And, you know,
Yeah.
and this is what I think that's why I think you are just such an amazing person, because you are doing that, you know. And
Yeah.
I think you are a mirror for people to look at, where it's like, oh, I can see that in Angie, what that could look like if somebody reclaims their recovery. And, you know, and because then it's obvious, it's not about fixing, it's about evolving into a depth and a profound human that you were probably not before all of that
No,
happened.
that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
they're like, I've learned, I mean, I even look at my Facebook memories. Like, you know how every day you look on Facebook and it'll say like 10 years ago, you know, and I'll read things I wrote and I'm like, I am so different now. It's not even, it's like a totally different person. But yeah, I mean, in the last year, I bought an RV and I drove all across the country and I've done 28,000 miles. I've been to 16 states, like 10 national parks. I would not have done that when I was medicated, and I could barely leave my house. You know what I'm saying? So there, it does come with like a certain level of like fearlessness, of confidence. Like now I realize, like, your life is so precious, and you truly, like, people say it as a cliche, like you only get one life or you only live once, or no, like I have been to the depths of suffering, like hanging on for dear life, wanting to die, and like not even knowing how I'm going to make it through the night. And like, damn it, I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it. And I'm not going to put up with any BS. Like, I'm not going to be treated bad. People are not going to talk down to me. I'm not going to be around people that treat me any less than the sacred being that I am. And if you don't want to do that, goodbye. You know, like, I don't have time. Life is short, for real. It's not just a cliche. It really is short. And you have to make the most out of what you can, even if that means you're crying about your dog dying for a month. I'm even going to embrace that, because that is sacred to me, and I would not want to be doing anything else than being here with him going through this transition. So yeah, yes, a lot of gifts came from that. Not that I, like you said, not that I want to wish that on anyone, but it does give me meaning that I can talk about these issues and not be afraid. Like I said, I want to talk about this the way that people talk about going to get their groceries, you know, that to normalize it more, that some people want to come off medications for various number of reasons. Some people experience extreme withdrawal reactions, but you can reclaim your life and find a different way to deal with the things, you know? Yeah.
So if somebody is listening right now who is, let's say, in the depth of that struggle, right? In the cycle with or without medications, could be also other substances, just in that cycle of feeling utterly hopeless, like what would you say to them?
I would say, I see you. I understand. I've been there. It's hell. It's suffering. Like, you're suffering so bad you can't even speak of how bad you're suffering. But I want you to know that there's people that do care, that can listen to you and validate you and not judge you or try to fix you or, you know, do things like that. So I think, I don't know, you have to fight for yourself also, that nobody can hand you healing, that it's hard work, it's messy, it's hard. I still, 5 years off of meds, I've been getting treatment for 14 years. Like, I'm 20 years into this, you know what I mean? Trying to recover from trauma. And then I get more trauma from trying to recover from the original trauma. Like, life is traumatic for some of us. I don't know why that is. And it just keeps coming. But I don't know. This is what I learned through everything. There is a place in everyone that the strength that you need to carry you through is in there, whether you're in touch with it or not. That will to live is so strong. And just find that place in you and fight like hell, and you can come out of it. It doesn't have to be a death sentence. Whatever you're feeling, there is ways out. There is ways to live a better life, to change things. It's there, definitely.
It sounds like when you were in those real depths of darkness, that one way for you to get support was literally reaching out online to these support groups. Can you tell people how they could find them?
We have some on our website. If you go to medicatingnormal.com, go under resources, There's a couple websites, like one was Surviving Antidepressants, which is people that are coming off of antidepressants or antipsychotics. There's another website called Benzo Buddies, and that's for people coming off of benzos. But I found my friends mostly on Facebook in some of the groups. But really, all you have to do is type in a drug name or a diagnosis name, and there's tons of groups, tons. I mean, there's support groups in person, there's support groups online. I would say be careful with who their funding is coming from. So like there's some major patient organizations that are funded by big pharma. So you want to be really careful with those. But those people that I found that were going through the same experience of coming off meds, they saved my life. Like there was days I could not days, there was years, like months that I could not grocery shop for myself. And I would text my friends and say, I need food or I'm going to starve. I don't have anybody to go get food for me. And this is back before curbside delivery, you know? And they would say, okay, Angie, get in the car. We're not going to the grocery store, just get in the car. And then I would say, okay, I'm in the car. And they would say, just drive down the street. You're not going to the grocery store, just drive down the street. And they would literally walk me through step by step. These are unpaid volunteers, just friends. And I'm still friends with them. I've visited them in person. I've met them. I love them more than my own family because we saw each other through these hellish experiences of coming off meds with no medical help, you know? So there's people that care. There's groups for everything. I'm telling you, there's so many different groups and you just got to find your people. Your people are there.
No, like I'm part of a few of those groups, like one on the cannabis hyperemesis issue, you know, where people can't stop throwing up from cannabis, and then also some on benzos. And I am so moved by the dedication of the community of supporting each other. I mean, it's like one of the most unbelievable things. And so I'm glad you talked about that, right? That this is really where people can find, especially this initial support where they might not be ready to talk to somebody, where they might not be ready to reach out for other kind of support. So I think everybody needs to know about that, that these groups are legit and amazing and wonderful people. And yeah.
We even have like medical researchers that are lurking, watching our groups, and they measure every month. They're doing like a research study on us right now to see the growth of support groups online. They've featured online support groups. What can we learn? It's literally in Psychiatric Times, which is where all the major psychiatrists read. So like it's a phenomenon. It's an underground. I was aghast because like I have a psychology degree and a social work degree, and I was like, what? People are online helping each other? Like what? There's no doctors involved? Yes. And guess what? They really, really work. And the basis of that is kind of what Natural Highs does, is peer support. People that are in the same situation as you, they understand what that feels like. You might go to a therapist 1 hour a week, but then what are you going to do the other 7 days? You need someone to talk to outside of the therapy office. So who are you going to talk to? So those people, you know, they're unconditional. They've been through the same thing you have. You just have to find which group fits for you. And, you know, I'm in like tons, and some groups call to me and some don't, and I ignore those. But yeah, you got to find your people.
I absolutely love that, right? And now, even beyond the online thing, right? A lot of programs have gone online. Like we do a lot of support online. I know Phoenix, which is a sober support community, they do everything online. Yoga teachers do stuff. I mean, there's so many beautiful things. So really encouraging people to don't stay stuck inside of your own hell. Like there are people who can relate and who are here to support you for sure. Yeah, I've seen that in 12-step communities now. I mean, amazing how people support each other. So one of the things I want to ask you, because I was so impressed when you guys contacted us, that you are showing the film in communities with nonprofits. So I just want to hear about your vision. Like, why are you doing the film like that? What is your vision and intention behind that? Would love to hear.
Well, what started was last summer, 2 summers ago, before the pandemic happened. I asked the filmmakers, what do you guys think if I like made a little schedule and visited some of these like more progressive mental health places, kind of like Natural Highs. There's a bunch of them in Massachusetts. One's called like Advocates, another one is Advocacy Unlimited. Inner Fire is another place. So there's all these places in the Northeast, and I was like, what if I like schedule it and just like go show the film and do like a little discussion? They were like, sure. So then it was like, okay, well, now I want to do that like in an RV, but I want to do it like across the Southwest and go to LA. And they were like, do it, you know, they didn't like pay my gas or anything, but like you can get a meal the day of a screening, you know, like little things like that. So I started doing that, and it was just so amazing to witness in the same room. Like, here's an example. In the same room in Massachusetts, we had a professor of pre-med at UConn, University of Connecticut. We had a child and adolescent psychiatrist. We had a 20-something guy who was cold turkeyed off of Adderall like that week. And we had a lawyer who fights for people that have civil commitment hearings that are being forced medicated against their will, all in the same row. And they were literally discussing what they just saw in the film. And the guy was literally like, I'm in withdrawal right now, and I can't find a doctor to help me taper safely. And like, he's shaking and he's sweating, and he's like, I don't even want to take this medicine anymore, but why is it doing this to me? You know, and then the professor is saying, all my residents need to see this. And then the child and adolescent psychiatrist is saying, parents come to me and they want drugs. I argue with them and say, no, your kid doesn't need Adderall. We need to like come up with a plan to help them not engage with video games so much or whatever, you know? And they say, no, I want to drug my kid, you know? So I was witnessing all these profound discussions in person, and it was like everyone watched the film together. They all just receive the same information. Everyone digests it on their own, in their own way, and then they start like talking about it. And I was like, these discussions are not happening anywhere. Nobody's talking about psychiatric drugs. We just blindly take them, and we just go along with the narrative that you need to go get help. You need to call a 1-800 number if you're suicidal. You need to call the police if a family member's in crisis. You need to take your medicine and be a good patient. Like, these are the narratives that we are following, and nobody's really questioning that. So I just kept doing it. And then 75 screenings later, the pandemic happened. I had made it from Missouri to Los Angeles. I did like screenings all through Arizona, New Mexico, California. And then the pandemic happened, ruined everything, but then we shifted to virtual. And so shifting to virtual was actually kind of good for us because we wanted to record these conversations in person. But once you introduce a camera, people start changing how they talk. So not once in those 75 screenings did we record anything. We just wanted it to be the sacred space and let people talk about these issues. But once the pandemic happened and we went virtual, we were like, well, we can record now because it's, you know, we're doing these panel discussions. There's less audience participation because it's virtual. So now we have all those recordings up on our YouTube channel, but it's like this conversation that needs to happen that hasn't ever happened. And they're using the film as a vehicle for that, just to like empower people, to teach basic health literacy, to learn, wait, there is another way. We don't have to like, you know, we're throwing all this money at mental health and it's not working. Wow, I didn't know that, you know? So it's been really rewarding. It's helped me feel like my suffering was not for naught, you know, that I can do something with that, that I can help people so they don't end up in my shoes, so to speak. So yeah, I've loved it.
It's amazing what the one showing that we did, just the buzz that it created and the conversation it created. I love this model that you guys are doing, you know, that people can't just, because people ask me, right? Oh, I want to just watch the film. And I'm like, well, actually, you can watch the film in community with conversation afterwards, because really that's what it is about, to start the conversation afterwards. And so I love that, you know, because it almost like challenges people to get a little bit more serious about their conversation and take the next step of like actually showing up for it. So I am excited, beyond excited, that we have another chance to do another showing on April 7th from 6 to 8 p.m. And we're going to have the registration coming soon for everybody. You can find it on naturalhighs.org. And I could hang out with you and talk with you forever, and maybe we can do another part at some point. I just would love to hear, like, if you would have one chance to like wake people up, right? To tell people like what you think is the most burning issue that they should pay attention to and that they should wake up to. What would you say that is?
I would just say you are not broken. There's nothing wrong with you, no matter who is saying it or where that message is coming from. Whatever is happening to you right now, is either exactly what needs to happen for your inner development, or there's a meaning from it, or it's there to wake you up to get out of the situation that you're in. Like it's not for, there's no chemical imbalance that landed on you that made you broken or ill. Even if your family, genetics, whatever, you're not a victim of that. That life can change drastically. You have more power than you think you do. You are not broken. That's it. Don't believe that lie. That is the most harmful of all lies.
It's so beautiful to talk with you, because I think the issue is overwhelming, right? It literally means rethinking mental health, how we understand it right now, admitting that we were on the wrong track for a very long time, seeing it as a chemical imbalance that people are born with. In my over 20 years experience of working with the most severe mental health symptoms, I cannot remember a single person who didn't have a trauma history behind their symptoms. So it feels like overwhelming. But I have to tell you, speaking with you always makes me hopeful, because you have such power in like getting this across and reaching people. And I think that's what it has to be, this human element, that more and more of us are standing up, are speaking the truth, you know, not succumbing to all these forces in our culture that are about profit, but having the guts to speak up and really communicate that. And when I look at you, you remind me that this is possible, you know, that we can make a
It is.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before we hang up, I just want to say, like, some people see me and they say, well, you're so normal, and you were in the military, and like you didn't have it as bad. But listen to me, I'm telling you right now that it is all over my medical record that I was severe and persistent and chronically mentally ill. I was classified as SMI. I am on disability. I have been on disability for almost 17 years. I didn't leave my house for 4 years. I used to not shower for 14 days. I had dreadlocks in my hair because I would not wash my hair. Like, I was severe. Not, so I'm telling you that even the most severe, you still have promise. There's still a part of you inside that has not been ruined by these false narratives that we've believed. And the same kind of what you said, Ivani. I was told I would never go to school. I would never finish school. I would never get married. I would, I lost everything. I lost my career. I experienced homelessness. I moved to illegal drugs to try to make myself feel better. I've been through all in and out of the hospital, on more than 40 psychiatric drugs. It's possible. I had to fight like hell to get my life back, and it's still not all the way back. I'm still a work in progress. I still meet criteria for many disorders, I promise you. It's just I'm very careful who I tell that to. So
I think that's and that's another myth, right? Because when we teach people neuroscience and we say, hey, you want to learn how to turn anxiety into your superpower, people ask me, they're like, well, but that's probably just for the mild cases, right? What about the severe cases? And I say, listen, I only work with severe cases in my private practice, and it all applies. There's no brokenness. There's not, it's symptoms that come from somewhere, and that can be treated, that can be healed and resolved. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's about, severity in terms of suffering, right? But not in terms of not workable, or that we cannot give
you're
people
not
the
a
right
lost cause,
treatment.
right? Yeah, very often we say, like, only these certain things work for these certain people, and everybody else, they're just screwed, and like they're thrown away, like just let them be medicated, and just let them. No, even those people deserve, it's a human rights thing. They even those people deserve a chance to feel better, that everybody, there's something for everyone here. There's no bad, severe, like, what's that? I'm trying to think of the term. Like, lost cause. Nobody's a lost cause, nobody. You have to be careful, because like I said, I was told I would never go to school, I never finish school, and that's such a disempowering message, that I would always take medicine for the rest of my life, I would never finish school, this was a chemical imbalance, this is genetic. Like, all those messages are disempowering, and it's almost like you get brainwashed and you have to unbrainwash yourself. Like, no, I'm smart, I'm powerful, I'm worth it, I have something good to offer this world. you know, yes, I might have symptoms, and yes, life is hard for me, but I can still do something meaningful, you know, with that.
Totally. And look at you. You are like leading a movement that is going to
Thank you.
change mental health in this country. I mean, you are doing it, right? And in my experience, people who are like considered, you know, having the severe mental health disorder, in my experience, these people are more sensitive, which
They
to me
are.
means more badass, which to me means more amazing, you know, when they get out of the being paralyzed into a place of leadership. And you are an incredible reminder for people that that
Thank
is actually the truth, you know.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Aw.
Super. So I look forward to our next screening. And then I'm going to be curious what we come up with after that, because I
We'll
certainly don't
see.
want to stop this.
I know, me either. I'm gonna be bummed when it goes on Netflix or something. Like, darn it, I can't do this anymore. But I'll think of something else to do. We'll
we,
see.
we find something else. You know, I have lots of ideas of, we can make a like a tour and show people other options and other treatments. And
Yeah, a
I have tons
retreat,
of ideas. Yeah.
something. Cool.
So we let's stay in touch, and then we invite everybody to join the community screening of Medicating Normal, the next one on April 7th. Super excited about that. Spread the word. If you heard anything during our conversation where you thought of somebody that this might be really helpful for, please share the podcast with them. Alert them that there's this opportunity to see the very powerful film. And, you know, we forgot to say that Angie is the rock star in the film, is
Oh,
amazing. You're going to see her whole story. It's really profound. And so stay connected. Thank you, Angie. It's so wonderful to speak
thank
with
you,
you.
Ivani. It was
Yeah,
wonderful.
super.
Awesome.